So, Caitlin, imagine you're wheeling your shopping cart around a supermarket. DJ, give us some ambient music, please.
Wait, we have a DJ now? Okay, give me a moment. I need to get into character.
Right. So you've arrived at the ambient aisle. What's there?
I see cans, I see jars, I see lots of packets and boxes, all doing their job.
And what are you thinking in this moment?
I'm thinking, this is a lot of options for something I'm meant to have solved by 7 p.m., so lots of ingredients, but maybe not so many solutions.
I'm back in the room. Caitlin, take a sip of water. Now, listen, your experience is not uncommon. As our lives get busier, the ambient aisle runs the risk, I think, of becoming less of a destination.
And yet, it's still the backbone of any grocery store, but somewhere along the way, all those cupboard staples have lost a little of their shine.
And that's unfair, isn't it? Because I think there's some real grocery heroes hiding there in plain sight. In fact, I think some of the most interesting innovation in the entire store is happening right there.
So stay tuned. We're here to celebrate the players who are reinventing this aisle. Brands that have recalibrated the value equation through design, storytelling, format, and sheer product brilliance. And one thing we can guarantee after this episode, you'll never think of tinned fish in quite the same way again.
So, after wrestling the agentic era of shopping on YouTube and, well, handing over the reins to our friends in Asia for our last episode, it's kind of nice to have a bit of normality back around here.
Which is a bold claim, given we currently have a DJ. Although I hope we bring a little unexpectedness in every episode that we make, within reason.
And we certainly try. And for this episode, we have two brilliant guests lined up. So they're going to be showcasing some of the very best innovation in ambient foods, and in two very different ways.
Really excited about that.
But first, I'd like to give a quick shout out to George Knott. Now, he's media correspondent at The Grocer, which is the biggest UK grocery title. He reviewed our episode, Caitlin, When AI Takes the Basket, and he wrote, "This podcast stays hyper-focused on what matters to brands and retains an evidence-based rigor, often lacking in more opinion-led shows."
I mean, we'll absolutely take that. We try to bring some rigor as well as opinion to the airwaves.
And we are, I think, pretty fortunate to have so many experts from across the MMR group that we can drag onto the show occasionally. Not only are they our sponsors, but they give us access to the latest consumer insight, sensory expertise, and of course, a constant stream of real-world product experience learning.
So we get to ask better questions, challenge things properly, and hopefully make this pod a bit more useful than just another marketing podcast.
The packaging was beautiful. The launch film made people cry. The strategy deck used the phrase cultural resonance 17 times. And then somebody finally tried the product. Ugh, awkward. Impact Makers is sponsored by MMR. Because eventually, somebody actually has to eat it, drink it, wash with it, or spread it on themselves.
And welcome back. So, earlier, when you coaxed me into that weird trance-like state, I suggested that ambient foods may have lost some of their shine.
And you're not alone, Caitlin. This is one of those feelings, actually, that data is happy to validate. So you've got Kantar panel data showing that we are shopping more frequently around the world, but with smaller baskets. So the big weekly shop where shoppers wander to all the aisles is kind of fading. Then you've got the IGD, which is the Institute of Grocery Distribution. They're based here in the UK, and they also point out that most supermarket trips now are mission-led. and that top-up shops and dinner for tonight far exceed those sort of, big stock-up missions. And then McKinsey, we often quote McKinsey on this pod, they highlight that decision-making windows are shrinking. So people are choosing what to eat closer and closer, like that 7 p.m. thing that you mentioned, closer to that moment of consumption. So you put all these things together, and it's no surprise that parts of the store built around planning, like the ambient aisle, they become kind of easier to ignore, don't they?
And we can see why this trend is happening. Hybrid working, convenience culture, urban living, and even reduced storage space in modern apartments. All of it favors shopping for immediate consumption. Tonight's dinner gets a vote. Next week's pantry does not.
Yes, and retailers have also accelerated this trend, of course, by opening more convenience and neighborhood stores. So if it is 4 p.m. and you don't quite know what you're having for dinner, no sweat.
I don't think we're saying the ambient aisle has become irrelevant, but it has become less aligned with how many people shop now. Put simply, it requires a level of planning that fewer shoppers are bringing into the store, which is rude because the aisle is fully stocked. And yet, when the world wobbles, where do the people head? As I recall, people weren't panic buying burrata in the pandemic.
Yeah, I also noticed this. It was the jars of pasta sauce, the cans of tomatoes, the big bags of rice, all that dependable stuff.
And one lasting legacy of that unforgettable mayhem has been the rise of so-called preppers, promoting the virtues of store cupboard staples across TikTok. Preparedness, but make it a vertical video. To tell us more, let's meet our new social media correspondent at the Together agency, Katie Hedge. Welcome, Katie.
So great to be invited on, Andrew and Caitlin. Of course, I'm not even going to try and replace the wonderful Shania.
Well, we did love doing the Z Factor together, but of course, all good things. And you come highly recommended, Katie. So, preppers, what's going on here? What makes it significant?
Yes, this is interesting, isn't it? Because while ambient might be getting slightly overlooked day to day, there's actually a growing band of people who are doing the exact opposite. Preppers are known for stockpiling ambient food products in case of unforeseen events or, dare I say it, disaster. And this is part of a wider preparedness strategy, which also includes defense of your stash of long-life staples.
I guess with the world as it is right now, this is the inevitable, right? I mean, we've had global pandemic, supply chain disruptions, geopolitical tensions. It doesn't take much for people to start thinking, what if?
Yeah, and I guess let's not forget, I think we've all been primed over the last few years, haven't we, by those horrible audible alarm tests on our smartphones. So, these are the tests that are priming, if you like, the entire world because they suddenly make the prospect of disaster feel more immediate, don't they?
Well, no wonder then, actually, that this trend is not only real, but accelerating. I should point out, of course, it's still minor in the overall scheme of things, but the sentiment is definitely spreading. And actually, our colleagues at Huxley have recently been working with the Red Cross to develop personas that represent the different ways in which the wider population prepares or doesn't prepare for possible disaster.
That's a pretty interesting angle there from the Red Cross. So have you got some examples of how these preppers are communicating on social media?
Yeah, so there's a real niche of preppers on social media, particularly on TikTok, where much of their content focuses on practical tips and advice, what foods to buy, how to store them, and general cupboard organization. But on TikTok, prepper culture is rarely framed as extreme survivalism anymore. Instead, it's presented as practical, organized, and even aspirational domestic behavior. So the products being discussed are overwhelmingly ambient foods as well. This includes canned goods, dried pasta and rice, powdered ingredients, bottled water, UHT milk, and condiments. But what's really interesting is that these foods are no longer seen as just cheap cupboard fillers. They've become part of a wider resilience strategy. Ambient food has shifted from convenience to preparedness, representing durability, resilience, and even a form of insurance. So while retailers may visually prioritize fresh produce and experiential shopping, ambient categories are quietly becoming an emotionally important infrastructure, which is why this niche is growing, particularly in the US, but with a much wider global relevance too.
So have you brought any TikToks to share with us today, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a couple of examples to show you from Charmingly Frugal and Prepper Press on TikTok. Now, both of these content creators are essentially just showing their followers their ambient survival products. So take a look.
7 foods that will last forever, or at least decades. Having plenty of long-term food stock for uncertain times requires some careful planning, but at least with these 7 foods, you can set it and forget it. 1 through 6 you can buy right off the shelf. Number 7 you'll have to make, but it's pretty easy. Follow for more prepper tips and share this video with somebody that needs to know. Number 1, honey. Archaeologists have found jars of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that was still safe to eat. It's a natural preservative, antibacterial, and packed with energy. It will crystallize over time, no big deal. Warm it up, it's good to go. Number 2, white rice. When stored properly in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, decades, 30 years or more. It's high in calories, lightweight, and very versatile. It'll fill you up and provide much needed carbs in a long-term collapse. Just make sure it's white rice. Brown rice has oils, it'll go rancid. Number 3, salt. Lasts forever. Not just a seasoning, it's good for preservation, preserving meats, fish. Heck, you can even use it for making saline solution at home. Great barter item. Keep it dry. Number 4, dried beans. Store it the same as rice, it'll last just as long. They're packed with protein, fiber, and essential nutrients. Beans combined with rice, 2 low-cost food that you can use in many different recipes. Both of those require water, so plan for that. Number 5, sugar. Like salt, never expires. Over time, it will harden, but just pound it down, and it's good. It's used in many recipes, it's a comfort food, and it's used in preservation. Number 6, non-fat powdered milk. Fresh milk will spoil quickly. Non-fat powdered milk, decades. This is about the only dairy option you'll have in long-term food storage. It'll give you calcium, protein, and essential vitamins. It's used in many recipes. You can use it in your coffee or just drink it straight up.
Some of us enjoy growing our own food and preserving it. But for me, I only encourage people to buy the food that they will eat. I'm going to encourage you guys to buy 1 for now, 2 for later. Only prep the food you eat, learn new skills, and keep growing and keep pushing forward as preppers, because there's a lot of hate in the world out there for us, but you know what? We're just going to keep going.
So there you have it, a bonkers situation where ambient foods are both overlooked and being cast as indispensable at the same time. Katie, many thanks for dropping into the studio. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Now, as product experiences go, what is about to unfold is probably one of the most profound. Rarely on Impact Makers do we come across a brand that doesn't just sell something, but completely reimagines what that thing is. So imagine, dear listener, if Willy Wonka opened a sardine shop. Yes, we appreciate exactly how insane that sounds. A fully realized, theatrical, joyful, slightly surreal retail and product experience built around perhaps one of the most traditional everyday products you could imagine.
Because that's exactly what you get with the fantastic world of the Portuguese sardine. Behind it sits a group with an even bigger ambition, and that's to tell the story of Portugal through products, through craft, and through experiences that people don't just buy, but talk about. So today we're exploring what happens when you take a commoditized category and turn it into something collectible, giftable, and globally remarkable. We're delighted to welcome Tiago Quaresma from the Value of Time Group. Tiago, this is one of the most extraordinary food brands we've ever come across. Tell our listeners a bit about the group behind it and what you're trying to build.
Hi, guys. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a huge pleasure to have a chance to share our story with such a wide range of listeners. Talking about our group, and it's the perfect way to start with, because our ambition with the brand of the fantastic world of the Portuguese Sardine actually follows a wider project, and that project relies on a problem, and I think that's always the best way to start any economical project. And the issue we are trying to address is a chronicle gap in the Portuguese economy, which is added value. And that's where our economical project started a couple of decades ago, because we realized how weak Portugal was exploring added value.
Not everyone who's listening will appreciate the sort of cultural significance of the sardine. Can you explain how important the sardine is to Portuguese culture?
Well, it's tremendous, and actually, as I said, we do our group. We work with many different sectors, but I would say none of them is as powerful as this one for a number of reasons. The number one is because Portuguese, the word Portuguese goes for sardine, as Italian goes for shoes, or as Swiss goes for watches. But unfortunately, unlike the Swiss or the Italians, the end product doesn't actually gets to the hands of the customers with that added value perception as the other examples I gave. But the truth is, worldwide, people know that the best sardine is actually the one that comes from Portugal. This is a very well-established truth. Back in the 60s, Portugal had over 400 different factories, and it was the second biggest exporter in our economy and the third biggest sector in the whole Portuguese economy. So it was something with a tremendous impact on any level you want to think of. We have our own factory from 1942. And when we bought it, there was this contradiction because the moment you enter the factory, you just feel it's not fair for that product to reach the supermarket shelf for, let's say, €1, $1, 80 cents, 90 cents, whatever it is just not fair. For the simple reason that it's impossible to pay them properly. It's impossible for them to have, minimum proper conditions.
So is this where the idea came from for the fantastic world of the Portuguese sardine to really reinvent the value equation to elevate the perception of value for your products in these factories?
Definitely it was. We bought the factory because we knew there was potential on the sector. We knew there was something special about it. But we tried to have this conversation with the supermarket chains in Portugal. We tried. And we tried to explain them how special this was, how unique it was the moment you step inside the factory and you see how special the process is. But of course, they gave us the same answer they give everyone. It was not personal. It was just the process.
Commercial reality.
And it was just price. I want to be competitive. All our brains shift to price, but you can be competitive through many different other differentiations process. But every time I say competitive, automatically we think of price. So we had a problem to solve. The only way the customer would actually be willing to pay the price we thought was fair was actually to be able to tell the story behind the product. And retail was actually the way we found the best way to establish that relationship with the customer. By opening stores, we were buying time, the time of those who are visiting us. And of course, let me very honest, of course, our number one target is the international one, also because this aims to be an international project. And we actually deal with an easier audience because it's an audience that is actually willing to listen because they are on holidays, so they have more time and they want to hear what's special behind behind actually the country they're visiting. And then on top of that, it started something very important for us nowadays, and especially for the US market, which is the huge awareness for the benefits of the sardine, because actually it's one of the best superfoods you can find nowadays. And of course, in that specific purpose, we got quite lucky because there was a media boom around the benefits of the sardine, and it's a TikTok trend and all of that. So all this combined create like the perfect thunderstorm.
Some momentum. Yeah, protein and oily fish.
Definitely.
You can't go wrong, can you? And I would encourage listeners to search the fantastic world of the Portuguese sardine retail, because the retail experience is phenomenal. I think you would give Nespresso a run for their money in terms of the way you execute these stores. And I know, Caitlin, they've opened one in New York, haven't they? What's your opinion of the store?
So I was very lucky to be able to go to one of the stores in Portugal before the store opened in Times Square here in New York City, my hometown. I was delighted to be able to then physically share that experience with my friends. And it's really beautiful visually and it seems like maps. It tells the story of the sardine traveling the world. So I think it's really fitting for Times Square and just a really fun experience overall. Really feels like you're stepping into a completely different world. So with these store designs, what are you trying to make people feel in those first few moments?
Well, yes, there is, even though the whole environment is very playful, it's not less serious because of that. There's quite some technique behind the shop. Again, we are trying to buy that time. We are trying to raise awareness, and that's the our number one intention is to raise awareness, and we do it through a couple of technical tricks. First of all, we own the building. We always try to do that every time we can because, I mean, when you intend to create a landmark, if you own the building, it gets easier, and you make sure you are for good, so you are staying in the long term. We always try to prepare the shops for the shy customer because if you get them ready for the shy customer, you have them ready for the extra. It's done. Every time you step in, if you feel like you have an escape route, you feel more comfortable. So you are less stressed about it. Then it's quite again a contradiction because in that store, which is a 100 square meter store, the first third of the shop sells nothing, has no products to be sold there, which is a contradiction because in such an expensive square, I mean, sounds insane because those are actually the most expensive ones because are the ones who are closer to the square. But in those, we are actually investing on capturing as many people as we can. So we have a real carousel. I mean, a proper carousel, the real one, like from the circus. We have a Ferris wheel, we have a clock on the ceiling, we have hot air balloons. So we have four different um, moving objects, and I mean, that's perfect to attract people. Then you have the color schemes, bringing the this fantasy atmosphere inside, and also the lighting is critical. We have a special lighting developed specifically for us from a Portuguese producer that keeps the environment very warm. We have a soundtrack that was created for us, especially for us, by a Portuguese musician. And it was created specifically to create that again that playful atmosphere to make you feel happy. And we invest a lot in our people, in training, giving them the best condition again to tell story because the story isn't told by itself. We rely on our people, our staff, to share the story. I don't want to sound presumptuous, but we think that we found a good balance between fantasy and seriousness. It is still serious, even though it is playful. And the reason why it is playful is because otherwise nobody would notice us. And you want it to be noticed so that we could tell our customers the powerful story behind the product.
It takes a really bold concept to take on what is the advertising mecca of Times Square, right? And to your point about creating an experience and standing out, that is the biggest level of competition that you can possibly find in that arena, right? As you mentioned, you said you're right next to the M&M store. They've got a giant Ferris wheel in there as well. Have you had any feedback on the New York City store? I mean, I know among my peers, you've given it 5 stars for sure. But I'd love to hear if you've had any feedback, given that this is a different arena and tinned fish is really trending and now kind of having a more global moment.
Um, well, Times Square is by far our biggest adventure. Um, and the reason why we are in Times Square is because no one actually stopped us. As we were trying to move forward, nobody said, you guys can't do it. And we kept moving and we kept pushing because, as I said in the beginning, our group is trying to fix this problem of the Portuguese economy with the added value. That's what we're trying to do. And when we say added value, I can also say, as I said, trying to finally have international brands, which we, as a whole, as a country, keep struggling to achieve. The US was always the number one market for the Portuguese sardine, historically, like by far, compared to any other market. So we knew we needed to go to the US because that's, if we manage to make this a proper international brand, it's going to be in the US that this will explode. For us, it was crystal clear from the very beginning. So we went to the US. Of course, in the US, if we wanted to have a flagship, it needed to be firstly in New York City. And we had a visit from Florence Fabricant from the New York Times. And then she wrote one of the most provocative headlines we could ever ask for. She wrote, "Skip the M&M store, head for the fantastic world of the Portuguese sardine." And this was out of this
Wow.
world. We couldn't, I mean, in our
You
best
can't pay
dreams,
for
we
that.
couldn't think. You
Yeah.
can't pay for that
Yeah,
because
yeah,
if you want to, they won't do it.
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed as tin fish has become more popular is that just like in a library, many people are choosing the tin fish by its cover, right? There's lots of beautiful graphic design, and it's getting increasingly more decorative. So I really love how you all have also tried to turn these into gifts and make an effort to even make them collectible. Tell us a bit more about what you do with your specific cans to stand out.
Well, it's very interesting because very often history has already many lessons for us. And it's interesting because back in the 50s, 60s, the tins are pieces of art, proper pieces of art. The fact that we print in the tins themselves and not in boxes or in paper, that's also very important. It's obviously 10 times more expensive, but it's part of our strategy because then you can feel it. If you talk specifically about the dates collection, those who have the year um, written on the tins, it was our best way to get the attention of those. But it was and still it is very important. It's very interesting from the gift perspective.
Is it true that there's a 1922 can option there if you were born in 1922?
Actually, the oldest one we have is from 1916 because when we opened the
Whoa.
first shop, we went back 100 years, and we have a very special story. We got once we got from Australia a picture from this old lady born in 1916, and she was showing the can for the picture, and someone came to Lisbon, Porto, I don't know, bought this can and brought it to Australia, gave it to her, and she was sharing it. It was so special, not only because she was from 1916, but also she was in Australia. When we got that email, it was really special. But we two questions we get very often is, are the sardines from the year? And the answer is no. Nevertheless, we just launched last week a sardine called Milésime, which is a sardine that has aged over the past 4 years, and we are putting in the market in the fifth year. And so, no, the sardines are not from that year, but nowadays we do have an aged sardine, which we kept in our factory for 4 years. I highly encourage anyone to try it because it will be a very good gastronomical experience because time evolved the product, and trust me, it is now much better.
Well, it's been very illuminating to talk to you. I guess, for our wider listenership, what advice might you give them when it comes to repointing that value equation? Because everything we've talked about over the last 20 minutes or so has been about driving that value equation up.
Well, the product must be the best, and we shouldn't even sit at the table without being 100% sure about it. In this conversation, I never said our product is the best. I know it is. And the meaning behind the product should be the number one focus of anyone trying to reach added value, is what it means.
Well, many thanks for giving us your time, Tiago. We've really loved having you on the pod. And truthfully, I can't think of an interview that I was more excited to do thus far. And I encourage all of our listeners to visit O Mundo Fantástico da Sardinha Portuguesa. Can you leave our listeners with any ways that they can engage with you or experience your brands?
I mean, with myself, of course, my LinkedIn is my only social media active. I don't have any other. And our brands is the Fantastic World of the Portuguese Sardine, and the website of our group explains a bit of our story for those who are interested on realizing what's behind not only this brand, but all the others. And please feel free to reach out. And it's our pleasure.
And can I put a word in for London for your 24th store?
Well, right now we are, I mean, who knows? We are actually opening a shop in the Louvre, the Museum of Louvre, this summer.
Wow.
So it's going to be pretty special too. And who knows? London is, of course, a very attractive city for a project like this.
We really appreciate you bringing the beauty of Portugal to the world stage, and we're excited to see where the brands go.
And thank you so much for having me.
Well, how fabulous was that, Caitlin? A masterclass, I think, in how to recalibrate the value equation.
For sure, because in many ways, products in the ambient aisle have become more price sensitive. So consumers will debate the cost of a can of tomatoes, but think nothing of spending $5 on a posh coffee or up to $30 on a tin of fish.
You're right.
Why do some categories get to feel like experiences while others remain stuck as commodities? And most importantly, what does it take for a product in the ambient aisle to become a destination?
I mean, there are plenty of stars out there if you actually look for them. And I would encourage listeners to check out all our social feeds for some of the very best examples from around the world. What I love about these products is that they spark some kind of reassessment about what the ambient aisle is capable of. I still think that Heinz collab with Absolute Vodka was a stroke of genius. It was so unexpected, and it made pasta sauces all of a sudden craveable. And a lot of stores deployed these products in their aisles with off-shelf displays, and that really paid homage to that product's impulsive quality.
And related, I guess, I remember seeing some Brewdog ranch sauces over there in the UK recently. So again, unexpected and really causing that reassessment that you mentioned. Loyal listeners will know we occasionally leave the studio and hit the aisles with our recurring feature, Store Reporter. But for Ambient All-Stars, we're adding a twist. This isn't just a store report, it's also a sensory unpack, asking not just what products claim to do, but what they actually feel like to experience. So we sent MMR's South American sensory lead, Juliana Zilio, into a Brazilian supermarket to find ambient innovations worth talking about. Juliana, welcome to Impact Makers.
Hi, Caitlin. Thank you so much for having me. Well, for this mission, I visited Mambo in São Paulo, a premium supermarket chain serving upper middle class consumers looking for a more elevated grocery experience. And one challenge was that so much innovation still comes from Europe and the US.
Yeah.
So I specifically wanted to find examples that felt distinctly Brazilian. And after quite a lot of aisles wandering, I found two products I think really earned their place in this episode.
That's excellent. And your first product tackles one of ambient food's greatest unsolved mysteries. How do you make shelf-stable meat feel appetizing, which is brave?
Well, the first products come from Vapsa, a Brazilian ready meal company collaborating with Knorr. The meals combine rice, beans, vegetables, and meat in compartmentalized trays and use vacuum and steam cooked technology to stay shelf stable without preservatives. I think what's interesting is how culturally grounded they feel. In Brazil, lunches is still emotionally important. People want something warm, comforting, and substantial, even when life gets busy. So these products are really trying to preserve the feeling of a proper homemade lunch in a highly convenient format.
That's not an easy challenge to tackle. So did it actually deliver? Because ambient meat can sometimes feel emotionally complicated.
Well, honestly, I was surprised. I tried the beef version and expected it to feel less fresh because of the vacuum packaging. But visually, it looked colorful and appetizing, and the flavor and texture genuinely worked. The beef was tender, well seasoned, and surprisingly home cooked in character. If I changed anything, I would probably enhance the aroma slightly more, because that fresh cooked smell creates such a strong emotional connection.
Absolutely. I mean, aroma can really be an emotional roller coaster. It can either draw you into a place, like wafting outside of a bakery, or completely push you away, like an offensive coworker's lunch. So we've just got time for your second candidate here, and this one sounds like it's entering what I'd call the sauce escalation era.
Yes, definitely. The second product comes from Temperata, a Brazilian condiment brand launching sauces inspired by barbecue culture and burgers. What stood out immediately was how much more contemporary they felt compared with traditional sauce brands here. The flavors felt louder, fresher, and more layered, especially the smoked notes. which instantly created that emotional association with Brazilian barbecue culture. I tried the smoked pepper sauce with grilled steak, and it completely elevated the experience. And I think that's the bigger point. Condiments are no longer just functional add-ons. Increasingly, they are becoming experience amplifiers.
Wow. That's great, Juliana. Thank you so much for bringing us to the Brazilian grocery store and putting some LATAM flavor onto Impact Makers. To see the products featured in today's episode, head over to our socials, including at Impact Makers Pod on Instagram. Juliana, we can't wait till the next time you're back.
Oh, thank you so much. I would be more than happy.
Now, ask any brand what great innovation looks like, and one good answer might be that it changes the way people see an entire category. And Mars Foods seems to have achieved this, creating what feels less like a line extension and more like a brand new destination in store. How did they do it? Well, let's find out, because we're delighted to welcome David Gadd, who's design director at Mars Foods. Hello, David.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me. Really happy to be on.
Now, this is a very cool job title, if I may say so. Tell us, what does a design director at Mars Food actually do day to day? And does this title make you popular at dinner parties?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think the word design in your title can make your role a little bit nebulous to people. But the way I describe it is in two different ways. So one is about kind of doing the thing that people expect designers to do. So creating experiences, making things look awesome, creating kind of cut-through packaging and content that pops. But I also deliver the whole design thinking aspect of things, where designers are really great at kind of making things real and helping this kind of whole test, learn and iterate approach. So I get to do the really fun kind of beautifying things, but I also get to do the actual product design, value proposition creation, iterative prototyping and things. So it's basically two things: brand experience and then just launching new products. And yes, it does make you popular at dinner parties because no one knows what my job is, and I actually make things. Whereas most people at dinner parties, I think they kind of move things around. So yeah, it's quite fun to actually be in creative industry. Yeah.
So, David, in this episode, we've been talking a lot about the untapped potential of the ambient aisle. Because let's be honest, it's not usually the part of the store people are browsing for an unexpected thrill. So what does it take for a more impulsive dynamic here, something that breaks shoppers out of autopilot and really makes ambient food feel genuinely discoverable again?
Yeah, it's a super tough challenge in the ambient aisle. When you think of ambient, you think of sort of sachets and I don't know, bags of stuff and cans and kind of quite fragmented, archaic part of the store. But in fact, like, ambient is awesome. It lasts a long time. It's affordable. It's convenient. It gets stored in your cupboard. Everyone's got loads of cupboard space. So really what we're trying to do is to create just a destination in store for something that's just easy to shop, noticeable, and actually makes you kind of feel kind of excited and gives you a bit of the adventure shopping. So some ambient categories like chocolate or booze do really well at that. So we're just trying to make sure that we actually have a kind of a way of tidying up the range, making it coherent, and something that makes you kind of break that sea of mess and makes you go, oh, there's actually a category here to shop.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, the reason we got in touch with you, David, was because we've been mightily impressed by what Mars Foods done with Ben's original street food. Now, if I take my local Tesco, for example, you have basically created a new destination in the aisle. So can you take us back to where the idea came from?
Yeah, so we're looking at how consumers are, just at a very macro level, how they're changing their relationship with food. And we just see all over the place the way that people are kind of deciding on what to have to eat or how they're eating. They're really going towards convenience. So you'll see this in yourself. You'll get to about kind of 3:30, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and you'll just be like, what do I have for dinner? You've reached decision fatigue. So you'll probably go find any excuse to maybe try and get a takeout or eat out, and to actually kind of to actually kind of think about what to cook and build a recipe. There's more friction in your head. So people are just reaching for more convenient solutions, whether it's eat out, take out, fresh ready meals, especially in the UK, or frozen ready meals in North America. And we actually found that there's even friction with those solutions where their fresh food goes off. You probably need to pick it out on a daily basis. So with this kind of cost of living crisis, with takeout, eat out obviously not being affordable every day, with people not having like a big real estate in their home for fresh or frozen food because they don't have huge fridges or freezers.
This is true.
We thought there's actually a way of Ambient delivering convenient meals. We also saw that actually people use some of our great rice products as ways of doing like small snacks or like smeals. So, which obviously aren't, you can have a better meal, a more complete meal than just rice. So
a schmeal.
Yeah.
A small
schmeal.
meal. Yeah.
It is a small meal.
Right.
Yes.
That's the first time I've heard that.
So how important was it getting retailers to really believe this could behave differently from traditional ambient launches, something that could really actually create that excitement and impulse in the aisle?
Yeah, I think with the launch of street food, which is a kind of complete range of kind of a complete meal, which is noodle based under Ben's Original, we knew that consumers really resonated with us, but we knew that, we couldn't just plonk this next to our existing rice products because it would blend in. People would think it is a side. It's not a main meal. And when you look at the products in the category already, there are products that you'll spot all across kind of rice and grains, noodles, pasta that actually meet this brief of a complete ambient meal. So if we didn't kind of bring all these players together and act as a bit of a category captain, it wasn't going to work. And, customers are essential to work. So you can even see the way we've launched this. When we launched in the UK, we had one customer partnership. We launched a range. We had a really great shelf back strategy. In North America, we kind of inserted ourselves with a limited portfolio into a fragmented set and didn't have the impact. So the linking of the customer is a huge unlocker. And I think that's probably the biggest barrier to success of creating a new category. If you try and do it by yourself, you'll most often fail.
And do we know how people are actually using Ben's Original street food in real life now that it's launched? Is it more of that schmeal, quick desk lunch, lazy dinner, post-gym rescue meal?
It is exactly all of those things. It's those emergency pantry backups you have where you go, what do I have to eat? Or my kids have just come home. I need to give them something, or I just got back work late. I don't want to order something. So it really is these micro meals. I think one thing which we saw, which was bigger than we expected, is it being used in the lunchtime occasion. I think just because lunch is so time compressed, people just are so like less ready to cook, and because it costs so much to get a sandwich these days, I think there's even friction for going to kind of places like that. So I think lunch was a big surprise.
So how far can this go? What do we think is the next chapter for Ben Street Food?
So I think if you look at the ways that you can purchase meals in the supermarket today, and if you go to Fresh, you can see it's quite an exciting category to shop with many cuisines, tiers of cuisines, combinations, segmented boxes. So I think if we can kind of create a category in ambient that delivers, we've got loads of them, and there's loads of cuisines, there's loads of meal types, the top 10 meals in the market. There's on the go, there's special things for two. There's when you think about cooking meals at home, there's a whole suite of options that you can just borrow with pride from Fresh to get there. But I'm sure there's also options that only ambient is there to solve. So things like a very micro run, being a student or camping, they're areas where you really just do not have any way of refrigerating really, where ambient presents a unique opportunity.
One thing we keep coming back to on this podcast is this idea of discovery. How do you at Mars Foods ensure that there are new things to discover, as consumers roam the aisles? You're tapping into people's curiosity.
Yeah, I think there's two things here. So one is with our core brands, like Ben's Original Dolmio. We need to make sure we make sure that they are looking modern and relevant. If you just keep a brand on shelf for ages and don't renew it, it will just fade in and people will be like, oh, that's not for me. So we've recently rejuvenated some of those brands because consumers love them, but they just weren't looking and feeling like something that represented them. So if you want a new generation to discover you need to appeal to that new generation. With innovation, with brands like Ben's and Dolmio that's been around for ages, you need to create something that's exciting and interesting and differentiated on shelf. And I think there's a huge tension between looking differentiated and exciting and new whilst having the trust and equity of the core.
Yeah.
So strangely, you'd think new brands would be the ones that are most discoverable. When we do, let's say, ambient ready meals or street food, that's quite scary for consumer, right? If you create a new pack with a creative design, but it doesn't have the trust of Ben's, people may be less likely to make the jump to discover a new category. So that's where actually the heritage and trust for a brand mixed with a kind of a differentiated new aesthetic kind of really helps you discover.
So obviously we know consumers are interacting with products differently these days. They're exhibiting things on social media. They're sharing with their friends. Are you actively designing for platforms like TikTok and social discovery now? Or does that come later for Ben's Original?
In terms of the stories that we tell, we saw recently a trend in America where people were taking rotisserie chicken bags and kind of taking the chicken out the bag and pouring the rice of ours in there and kind of mixing it all together and kind of creating this saucy rice mix and then putting the chicken back in. So I think it's kind of creating, content that cuts through, but also there are some really fun things that we can take that consumers are doing that are generally awesome and then just scaling them up and sharing them around to more people on how to create fun meals. So it's kind of trying to tap into those fun things rather than just like another sort of here's how to make this famous top 10 meal video.
Yeah. So, we've been looking at the rise of AI's role in choosing consumers' baskets. It's already happening, particularly in Asia. How do you design products that are more likely to be picked by these agents?
Yes. So the answer to this question is not an even more beautiful pack because agents do not have eyes to view things and choose things on the shelf. They are basically reading a lot, which as a designer is quite intimidating to me. So I actually am probably not part of the solution on this. But basically, if you're marketing to agents, you need to make sure that you're seen. So importantly for us, our own touch points like our product description pages, the actual descriptive elements we used on the text next to our products becomes even more important. And to get our products seen and talked about more and published more and kind of how they're part of today's mealtime conversation is even more important. So it's that written content that you see that turns up in code that is more important. So I'm not sure how much design can solve this problem.
No,
actually.
but you're right. And we've heard before that, more than ever, brands need to exist as data. So having that sort of easily read descriptions of your products online is a big step, although it might just seem a simple one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's been great chatting with you about all of this. When we look at the ambient aisle 5 years from now, what do you hope is different because of the work that you're doing today? And ideally, that's just a little bit beyond maybe feeling slightly less beige and a little bit more culturally alive.
Yeah. So, I mean, the ambient aisle genuinely is awesome. It's more cost effective. It is. We will make it more nutritious. And it's also like great for the planet. I mean, not many people are talking about that anymore, but it is a lower energy solution. There's less food waste. You don't need to refrigerate. So I think for us, I'd love to make sure that this aisle is as appealing and salient as shopping fresh. So you've got that whole discovery there, but it's got all the excitement that you get when you shop a Deliveroo or you shop an Uber Eats. So you want that excitement, the convenience, and maybe a few pain points that only ambient are there to solve. So yeah, I think a place that you would go into store where you're excited to buy a meal solution with a great range of cuisines and options.
Thank you, David, for taking your time. And we will keep abreast of what street food does next.
Cool. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
Andrew, I genuinely think this might be one of my favorite episodes we've ever done. Speaking with Tiago felt like a masterclass in how brands can create value even when surrounded by commoditization. Mars Foods showed that even in one of retail's most crowded environments, it's still possible to create an entirely new destination. And then Juliana arrived from Brazil to tell us that condiments are becoming experience amplifiers. And meanwhile, somewhere on TikTok, preppers are building bunkers full of lentils and sardines. And that's quite the identity crisis for one aisle.
It really is. And, because when you strip it all back, ambient products possess some remarkable advantages, longevity, convenience, robustness. And, they use a lot less energy than, say, refrigerated or frozen goods. So in many ways, this category starts to feel more future-proof. And perhaps that's the twist in all this, because for years, ambient products were treated as a sort of boring background characters of the supermarket. But increasingly, I think they're starting to look like some of the smartest and most adaptable players in the entire store.
And let's acknowledge that some ambient brands are now behaving more like fashion brands than grocery brands. Limited editions, collaborations, collectability, the year of your birth on a tin. Honestly, if somebody told me there were queues for limited run canned tomatoes, I might not look up from my desk.
So if you want to see more of the products we've discussed today and more besides, please head over to our socials. We've gone a bit overboard this time. Loads of global examples to add weight to this episode. You'll find us on Instagram
at Impact Makers Pod.
And on LinkedIn. Just search Impact Makers.
Next time on Impact Makers, we return to Ozempic. And this time, the conversation goes deeper. Because over the last year, the GLP-1 story has changed dramatically. And so have the consumers.
So, together with brand new global research from MMR, we explore what happens after the hype and what happens when appetite changes, when pleasure, reward, indulgence start to feel different, and when consumers begin questioning not just how much they eat, but why they eat at all. And perhaps most critically,
what happens when people come off the drugs? Do old habits return? Or are we witnessing the beginning of a fundamentally more intentional consumer? That word again, Andrew. This episode will explore one unavoidable question. How do brands succeed in a world where consumers may never consume the same way again? It's the next chapter of the GLP-1 story, coming soon to wherever you get your podcasts.
And you don't want to miss that one.
Until then, thanks for listening. We appreciate your company, but don't keep us all to yourselves. If you know someone who would enjoy Impact Makers, tell them. Goodbye.
Goodbye.